The first morning I knew something was wrong was the day I found my mother-in-law asleep on the living room sofa with her shoes still on and my favorite throw over her knees. "Hi," Joan said, as if she'd just dropped in for coffee. "I couldn't sleep, thought I'd keep you company." We hadn't planned company. I'd come home from the clinic at 7 a.m., coffee thermos in hand, ready to finish a grant proposal in the home office before my shift at 2. The house smelled like laundry and toast. Joan's overnight bag was on the ottoman. Her car was in our driveway. She shown up the night before after dinner with my husband, Ethan, insisting she only needed a few nights, while she figured out a rental inspection at her condo. That was the story, short-term, logistical. I believed it because it's what you do when your husband says his mother needs help. At first, she was a relief. She made a pot of soup, folded towels, and woke at 6 to take the dog out. She brought over muffins. She complimented my curtains in the way people do when they want to belong. She sat at the kitchen island and watched me work like a spectator admiring a machine. Then she started rearranging. It was small at first. A coaster moved, the lamp shade straightened, a stack of papers shifted to the shelf. Then she started eating from the fridge without asking and leaving jars open. One afternoon, while I was on a conference call, I stepped out to make tea and found her at my desk scrolling through files on my laptop. "Just checking the grocery list," she said, eyes flicking back to the screen. "You always have so many tabs, I thought I'd help organize." "Please don't open my work files," I said. It was polite, the tone I use with patients when they ask me about things outside my practice. She smiled and apologized, but the pattern continued. Keys taken from the hook, mail signed for in case you weren't home, calls to our neighbor about the gutter that never leaked before. Ethan's reaction never escalated. He'd give me a look when we were alone, then soften it into a shrug. "She's making an effort," he said. "Let her rest." Let her rest turned into let her move boxes into the spare room. Let her move boxes turned into let her keep a toothbrush on the sink. 2 weeks in, Joan had the encyclopedia of our routines memorized. The times I left for clinic, which of the kids took which bus, where we kept the spare car keys. I kept a list in my notes app, not because I was planning to use it as ammunition, but because the slow erosion of boundaries feels like a trick. When you can point to the pieces and say, "This is a problem," it stops feeling insane. The list had things like, took mail, signed for package 37, cleaned out freezer 39, changed thermostat 311. It read like a case file. By the end of the 3rd week, the tone changed. Joan began leaving notes, not the polite kind, but passive-aggressive reminders on the fridge. Maybe cut back on late shifts. Exhaustion isn't a good look. She started telling neighbors that were helping her out in a way that framed me as fragile and dependent. I overheard one woman at the bus stop say, "It's nice she has family to look after her." The implication was loud. I was not managing. Joan was stepping in where I couldn't. The turning point was the day my landlord called. "Is Joan staying permanently?" he asked, blunt. "There's a clause about long-term guests and insurance." I explained the short-term story and promised we'd sort it. He wasn't interested in family dynamics. He was interested in liability. I had legal liabilities in the sense that a long-term, undocumented resident affects insurance and taxes, and all the things that become sticky when someone decides to set up a life under your roof without being acknowledged. That practical fact focused my thinking. This wasn't just emotional. It had financial consequences. That night, after the kids were in bed, I told Ethan I needed help drawing a line. "I don't want to make things weird with your mother," I said, "but she's taking over. We need a plan, dates, expectations if this is temporary." He nodded. "I'll talk to her tomorrow." He did, in the way husbands do when they don't want to choose. He spoke gently, reminding Joan about the condo inspection, and she agreed, smiling like the promise meant nothing. 2 days later, she announced, over breakfast, that the condo inspector had postponed. The closing on a neighbor's rental came first, and she just needed a little longer. That's when I stopped trying to get her to leave and started planning how to make staying tolerable on my terms. I did 3 practical things that weekend. First, I drafted a short house guest agreement. Nothing legal sounding, just plain bullet points. Chores divided, food shared, utilities contribution, and most importantly, dates. I printed 2 copies and left them on the counter. It looked like domestic paperwork, but it was a boundary in ink. Second, I opened a new bank account labeled Household, Shared Expenses, and set up a Zelle link. I didn't tell anyone official why I did it. I told myself it was prudence. The account was empty, but it made the idea of money exchange possible without drama. Third, I changed the Wi-Fi password and created a guest network. It was petty sounding, I know, but internet access is a small, modern lever. If someone is living in your home, they use your utilities and internet. The guest network gave me a clear, daily control. Access could be given or withdrawn with a text and an automatic payment. That afternoon, Joan asked for the password because she wanted to stream a gardening tutorial. I slid her the printed house guest agreement instead and said, "If you're staying past the 2 weeks, I need us both to sign this and plan for shared costs." I saw her face change, half surprise, half annoyance. "This is ridiculous," she said. "We're family, you don't charge family." "Family also chips in when they're here," I said. "It's fair, it keeps things clear." I kept my voice even. Ethan watched the exchange from the doorway, expression unreadable. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You think you can invoice your way out of being a good daughter-in-law?" "No," I said. "I think I can make it so everyone understands what temporary looks like." She didn't sign. She asked for Wi-Fi again. "Just this once," she said. I offered the guest network username, but explained she needed to set up a recurring payment via Zelle for $350 a month toward utilities and groceries. It was not a punitive number. It was a simple, local market room and board estimate I'd pulled from rental sites for similar arrangements. She scoffed. "I've helped raise your husband. You don't bill gratitude." "I don't bill gratitude," I replied. "I bill expenses. If you're using our home, you cover a share." Ethan swallowed. For the first time, he didn't step in. He said nothing. Joan glared and then did something I didn't expect. She walked into my bedroom, opened a drawer, and took out the envelope with our wedding photos. She held them up like a card. "You think money matters more than family," she said. "It's not a question of money," I said. "It's a question of boundaries. We can either have a clear plan or an invisible taxi that runs people over. I'm choosing clarity." She left without the password, slamming the screen door behind her. The kids cried a little in the next room. Noah asked if Nana was mad. I explained we were setting rules and promised to take them to the park. That night I set up the Zelle link, attached a short explanation, and typed a message. "Hi Joan, welcome. If you plan to stay beyond 2 weeks, please set up a monthly household contribution of $350 to account. This covers utilities and groceries shared fairly. If not, please let us know your move-out date." I hit send and watched the 3 dots appear as she typed, then disappear. She didn't reply immediately. I left my phone on the kitchen counter and cleaned the sink until midnight. When I finally checked, there was a new text. "I'll think about it." I knew that thinking stage. It could mean stubborn refusal or the first step toward respecting rules. Either way, I wasn't going to let the house become a battlefield of passive aggression. Buying groceries and paying utilities weren't moral tests. They were practical things that measured whether someone was truly staying as a guest or moving in as a resident. Joan, "I'll think about it" text sat on my screen until mid-morning. At 9:12, she sent another. "Why are you making this such a business? Family helps family." I answered with the simplest, calm sentence I could manage. "If you're staying, we all chip in. Sign the house plan or tell us your move-out date." She didn't reply. Instead, she filled the house with activity, doing laundry at odd hours, leaving the back door unlocked, calling my neighbor to ask whether our cat ever used the basement. She tried the old method, make everything normal until it becomes normal. I stuck to the plan. That afternoon, I printed 2 copies of the guest agreement, folded them into a clean envelope, and set it on the kitchen island. On top, I placed a short note. "Please sign 1 copy and set up the Zelle transfer by Saturday or tell us which day you'll move out." No pleading, no speech. I left the house and ran to the grocery store so I'd be gone when she read it. When I returned an hour later, the envelope was open and the agreement lay where I'd left it, unsigned. On the counter, Joan had left a passive-aggressive sticky. "I'll pay in other ways." That was her equivalent of a check. By Wednesday, the landlord called again. He'd noticed Joan's car in the driveway nearly every night for 2 weeks and asked whether she'd been added to the lease. I told him the truth, that she was a temporary guest, but we were formalizing our arrangement, and he offered practical help instead of judgment. "There's a clause about long-term guests," he said. "If someone stays beyond 30 days, it affects insurance and the lease. If you're making an agreement, put it in writing and I'll note it on my files so we don't have a problem later." He was uninterested in family politics. He wanted paperwork that matched reality. That note from him gave my agreement extra teeth without dragging in lawyers. That evening, Joan exploded. She took the unsigned agreement and hurled it like a paper airplane onto the couch. "You can't bill family, Jess," she said, voice sharp. "Do you think I'd move in just to freeload? I raised your husband." She made a show of folding the throw precisely where she'd slept. "Then sign it," I said, "or tell us when you leave." She sneered. "If this is the way you want to keep score, fine. I'll stay somewhere else." She stormed out and slammed the neighbor's gate so hard the kids came running to ask what happened. That night I left the Zelle link active and sent a one-line message to my siblings and a few close friends who knew the story, keeping you in the loop, formalizing temporary stay. If anyone needs to contact Joan about space, let me know. I didn't want drama, I wanted accountability. The message created quiet social proof. People who'd seen our house over the years now had a sense of what we were doing. On Thursday morning, the paltry sums started to appear, small gifts left on the porch, canned goods, a casserole. Joan was trying the gratitude route, the social kindness route. It didn't change the hollow feeling that she'd been edging her way into our rhythms. Saturday arrived. I put out coffee and set the signed house plan on the table with a pen. Joan sat across from me like she'd been preparing for a negotiation. Ethan hovered in the doorway, tense. "This is petty," he said quietly. "We could just ask her to leave." "We could," I said. "But she's already here. Either she contributes or she moves out. That's the choice." Joan pursed her lips. She signed the agreement with a slow, theatrical flourish and then, for the audience more than for me, asked, "How much?" I told her the number, $350 a month, payable by the first of each month via Zelle to the household account. It covered groceries and utilities, and it was a fair, local market figure, only slightly more than a cheap room rental, intentionally clear and not vindictive. She blanched but didn't refuse. "Fine," she said. "I'll set it up." By Monday, the first payment showed in the account. I recorded it, printed a short receipt, and slid it under her cereal bowl. She noticed and barked a short, surprised laugh. "You're charging rent now," she said, part indignation, part grudging acceptance. "Yes," I kept my voice neutral. "You're staying, this is how we'll do it." The month that followed was not drama-free, but it was predictable. Joan paid, and because she paid, she felt entitled in a new way. She'd won a strange transaction, space in exchange for money. She used her money like a key, expecting the same privileges she'd taken before. When she crossed the line, inviting herself to a work meeting I'd scheduled at the kitchen table or calling our neighbor about a fence without asking, I reminded her of the signed house plan and the chores list she'd agreed to. I sent polite, itemized texts. "Reminder, you're on kitchen duty Monday and utility split is coming out Friday." Those texts were boring and precise. They replaced the theatrics with bookkeeping. Ethan watched it all with that slow, complicated look people get when they realize two truths at once. Their parent can be selfish, and their partner can be firm. He began to step in when I asked him to, writing a quick note to his mother to confirm the Zelle payment and reminding her which days she'd assist with childcare. He didn't storm into conflict. He enforced agreed terms. That shift made more of an impact than any argument. Neighbors noticed the change. Joan's conversations at the bus stop shifted from "I'm helping" to "I pay board." People who had quietly taken Joan's side started saying, "Oh, you're renting a room? That's sensible." Their language reframed the situation into something ordinary and respectable. For Joan, who'd wanted control by making everything look informal and familial, Being formally a tenant was humiliating. For me, it was practical. She'd contributed to household costs, helped with groceries sometimes, and crucially, she no longer felt free to rearrange our lives. There were low moments. Joan complained to Ethan about being reduced to paying rent and loudly recalled how she raised him. Ethan listened without defending her first. That in itself was new. Once, she left a passive-aggressive note on the fridge. "Thanks for the receipt." I photographed it, logged it with the household documents folder, and left a sticky note next to it that said, "Utility receipts filed in shared account." That little administrative act was the quiet enforcement I'd chosen. Paper, records, predictability. 3 months later, Joan moved her condo's furniture out of storage and into a small, furnished rental she'd quietly arranged. She called to tell me she was freeing up space at the house, but that she'd continue the Zelle payment through the end of the month because she felt obligated. I thanked her. She stopped staying overnight. We kept the household account open. Her payments slowed and eventually stopped. I kept the receipts. In a practical file labeled household history, I had transaction records, signed agreements, and a stack of polite, recorded messages that made it clear how the last months had unfolded. The best part wasn't the money. It was the return of routine. The kids had their routines back. I had my work-quiet mornings, and Ethan and I began communicating practically, texting a calendar of who's on pickup duty rather than letting resentment fester. Joan called once more 6 months later, sounding smaller. "I'm settled," she said. "I'm sorry for making you feel put upon." She didn't ask to move back in. She didn't ask for more favors. I answered simply, "Good, that's what we needed." We ended the call with nothing dramatic, no apology parade, no grand reconciliation, just the quiet closure of a chapter. I didn't make a show of it. I didn't post about my triumph. I kept the receipts filed and the guest agreement in a labeled drawer. That paperwork and the small, steady payments were my quiet revenge. Not humiliation, not spectacle, but the restoration of the lines that let a home be a home instead of an open door for someone else's entitlement. The living room sofa remained mine. The throw stayed folded on the back of the couch. And when Joan passed by on holiday visits after that, she greeted me with a short smile and a distance that neither of us had crossed again. Next story. I never expected the person I trusted the most to become my worst nightmare. Emily and I met in college, and from the start, she had this warmth that drew everyone in. I thought we were perfect for each other. At least, that's what I believed until the cracks started showing, cracks I hadn't noticed until they were dangerous. It began subtly. She would joke about my husband, Mark, in front of our friends. Small comments about his career, his habits, the way he dressed. At first, I laughed it off, thinking it was harmless teasing. But soon, those little comments grew sharper. She would privately text me, "Are you sure Mark loves you?" Or "You deserve someone better." My heart sank each time, but I dismissed it as insecurity. Then came the real warning signs. Emily began showing up at our apartment unexpectedly. At first, it was just to visit, but soon she started rearranging things, touching personal items, leaving notes that only I would see. Once, I found my favorite necklace missing, and later it showed up on her dresser in her apartment. I confronted her, and she smiled sweetly, pretending I had misunderstood. "I just borrowed it for safekeeping," she said. Everything escalated the night she tried to destroy my marriage. Mark had a big promotion at work, and Emily invited herself over for dinner, bringing a little celebratory gift. She drank too much and started insinuating that Mark had been hiding financial troubles, that I was naive, that he didn't love me. I could see the seed of doubt forming in Mark's eyes, the look I'd feared. I realized then that Emily had been planning this for months. All the small manipulations, the doubts, the constant undermining, it was a coordinated effort to break us apart. Panic set in at first. I couldn't lose my husband, not to a friend who had been pretending to love me. That night, I decided to take control. I started documenting everything. Texts, emails, voicemails, every interaction that hinted at her intentions. I saved every suspicious message, every manipulative comment. Then I did something Emily never expected. I confronted her, but not with anger. I played calm, collected, and observant. "Emily," I said the next time we met for coffee, I know what you've been doing. You've been trying to make me doubt Mark, trying to plant ideas, even moving my things. I have all the proof I need." She laughed, thinking I was bluffing. Proof of what? That I'm a good friend. I slid a tablet across the table. Screenshots of messages, photos of my missing items in her apartment, recordings of her insinuations at our apartment, all laid out like evidence in plain sight. Her smile faltered. "I'm not here to fight," I continued. "I'm here to make sure you understand the consequences. Keep pushing, and everything will be exposed, not to ruin you, but so no one can manipulate someone else like this again." Her phone buzzed constantly as I synced all evidence to a secure cloud drive and sent copies to mutual friends, carefully framed so that it was clear she had been deceitful without exaggeration. I didn't humiliate her, but her reputation started crumbling immediately. Friends who had taken her side began pulling back, realizing she had been dishonest and manipulative all along. Emily tried to recover, but the damage was done. She could no longer convince anyone that she was the innocent, loving friend. Mark and I, meanwhile, grew closer, seeing how easily we could manipulate reality together, but with truth on our side made our bond stronger. He never doubted me again. By the end, Emily had no leverage, no influence, no room to maneuver. My revenge wasn't grandiose or vengeful in the traditional sense. It was methodical, precise, and entirely effective. She had tried to destroy my marriage, and I had turned her own schemes against her, using calm intelligence rather than rage. I learned something important through all this. The best revenge isn't about dramatics or retaliation. It's about taking control, protecting what matters, and making sure the truth speaks louder than lies. Emily had pretended to love me, but in the end, I preserved my marriage and restored peace in a way she could never undo. Next story. I never imagined my family could betray me in such a cold, calculated way. I grew up believing that blood meant loyalty, that family had your back no matter what. But when my father passed away, I learned the hard truth. Some people will turn on you the moment opportunity knocks. The reading of the will should have been a bittersweet moment, a time to honor my dad's memory. Instead, it was a battlefield. My older cousins, Greg and Linda, produced documents and agreements that conveniently left me out of nearly everything. They said I had already received my share through advances over the years, advances I never knew existed. My father had left me his small apartment, some stocks, and a savings account. But by the time I tried to claim it, everything had been mysteriously redirected or frozen. At first, I was crushed. I felt the weight of betrayal, the sting of being written out of my own inheritance. But I didn't let anger consume me. I let it fuel me. I knew I couldn't fight them directly. They were crafty, and I didn't have the proof to challenge them yet. Instead, I decided to focus on myself. I moved into a modest apartment and started freelancing, teaching myself everything I could about investing and small business. Nights were long, but every dollar I saved, every strategy I tested, was another step toward proving I didn't need them. I built a small consultancy helping local startups manage finances and grow. At first, it barely paid the bills. Then one of my clients hit big, and the contracts snowballed. Within a few years, I had a profitable business and a growing investment portfolio. Meanwhile, Greg and Linda were living their lives as if I had vanished, bragging about what they'd secured from Dad's estate. They didn't know I had been watching, calculating quietly, building my own empire without them realizing it. The day I finally revealed myself was quiet but deliberate. I started small. I offered to fund a local community project they had been trying to manage for publicity. I insisted on handling all the finances, and naturally, my name ended up on every press release. They couldn't claim the credit without me. Next, I began investing in properties around their neighborhood, houses, small office buildings, even the cafe they used to mock me about. Slowly, their resources dwindled while mine grew. When Greg called me one night, desperate and frantic, I could hear the panic in his voice. He needed a loan for a failing business and had nowhere else to turn. "Please, we're in trouble, we need help," he said, voice shaking. I listened carefully, then calmly replied, "I'm willing to help, but at a fair rate. Interest applies, of course." Linda tried to intervene, arguing that family shouldn't be charging family. I just reminded her, gently, that family doesn't steal from each other either, and they had stolen from me. They had bragged about the fortune they had claimed from Dad's estate. They had laughed at me, dismissed me, assumed I'd crumble. Instead, I had quietly turned their betrayal into motivation. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, and every decision I made ensured they would rely on me if they wanted to survive. By the end, the tables had completely turned. I watched them adjust to a reality where the once powerful cousins needed my support, humbled and cautious. I never humiliated them publicly. I didn't need to. The lesson was clear. Betrayal only works if you let it break you. I let it sharpen me instead. I didn't just reclaim my father's legacy. I built something far larger, and for the first time, I truly understood my own strength. The irony wasn't lost on me. The family that tried to erase me ended up depending on me for survival. And I could finally, quietly, enjoy the satisfaction of watching them learn what it felt like to be powerless. Next story.